Right.
Well,
Yeah.
he probably is.
We'll give him one second.
There were a lot of pancakes. You could be down there. Take a minute or two.
Mark, do you mind going around the corner and making sure he's on the way? Oh, no, he can. Yeah.
You gotta get Wallace.
That's, that would make more sense. I just.
Absolutely. He's gonna come back with the pan. Are you speaking?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our city council meeting. To start, I'd ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Here.
Councilmember Gibbons is absent. Councilmember Sears,
Here.
Councilmember Dewey,
Here.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Councilmember Wirtz.
Thank you. Before we start, I want to just make one brief comment. I think some people noticed there was a change in the agenda on Tuesday. We've issued a revised agenda. There were 5 bills having to do with civilian pension plan and some deferred compensation things. I pulled that from the agenda on Tuesday. Basically, what happened is on Monday, the Civilian Pension Board had a motion that passed basically stating that they neither accept nor reject a move to the logger system and request city council to engage with the board directly. A change in civilian pension plan does not require, its council approval does not require approval of the board. However, in my estimation, it would not be appropriate to move forward and change a plan without the support or at least further conversation with the board that oversees the civilian pension plan. So on Tuesday afternoon, I met with CAO Hawes, and after that meeting, I decided to pull it from the agenda so that those bills are not on it anymore, and that matter is not, for the time being, is not under consideration. So we will now move on to public hearings. We have a request for a zoning code text amendment to add animal training as an accessory use in single-family residential zoning districts. Mr. Hessel, do you wish to enter any exhibits into the record?
I would, Mayor. I would offer as Exhibit 1, the affidavit of publication verifying notice of this public hearing appear in the St. Louis County. Exhibit 2 is the affidavit of publication verifying that notice of public hearing appeared in the Webster Kirkwood Times. Exhibit 3 is the report of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated February 3, 2022, in which the commission recommended denial of a zoning code text amendment to add animal training as an accessory use in single-family residential zoning districts. And Exhibit 4 is the subcommittee report of the Planning and Zoning Commission dated February 2, 2022. And Exhibit 5 is the Code of Ordinances of the City of Kirkwood.
Thank you, John. Who will present this to the city council?
That would be Planner 2, Amy Lowry.
And before Amy starts, let me, oh, no, go ahead. I just want to explain the process for a public hearing. Public hearing is a chance for the presentation by city staff, and if the petitioner so wishes, make a, presentation to the city council. The city council will hear that. There will be an opportunity for public input. There is no vote tonight. So after the public hearing tonight, this will be on our new business agenda on our next meeting, which is I think the 17th. So just understand there's no vote tonight. Council won't be saying they're in favor, against, or anything like that. This is a fact-finding evening. So I just want everyone to understand what to expect tonight. Amy?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a little bit of background on this request. The applicant applied for a home occupation for a dog training business in October of last year. And a home occupation is defined as a business, profession, occupation, or trade that is conducted within a residential dwelling unit for the economic gain or support of a resident of the dwelling unit, and is incidental and secondary to the residential use of the lot, and does not adversely or perceptively affect the character of the lot or the surrounding area. So staff reviewed her application for a home occupation and informed her that we could not approve it because we determined it was akin to animal grooming, which is specifically prohibited as a home occupation. We also pointed out that a home occupation is intended to be conducted entirely within the home, and only one client at a time would be allowed on the premises. The applicant requested how to appeal the denial of a home occupation, and we told her that a staff interpretation was appealable to the Board of Adjustment. She did appeal to the Board of Adjustment the determination that dog training was not a permitted home occupation. And at the Board of Adjustment meeting, she made her case that training was different from animal grooming. And she also elaborated that her business was part training for more than one dog at a time, and that some of the training was necessarily outside of the house and in the detached garage. So we testified to the Board of Adjustment that if staff's interpretation, if the board believed that was wrong, she would still be held to the rules of home occupation, which means it would have to be inside a structure and only one client at a time. The Board of Adjustment ultimately ruled in staff's favor on this and denied her the appeal for the home occupation. They did suggest to her that what she was really looking for was an amendment to the zoning code to permit what she wanted to do, which did not fall within the confines of a home occupation. And so she applied to the Planning and Zoning Commission to amend the code to add animal training as an accessory use in single-family residential districts. So this would allow her to operate her business on the property similar to a home occupation, but with use-specific standards for animal training. And she requested that this be an accessory use permitted with standards, but she's not averse to the accessory use requiring a special use permit. And that would allow site-specific standards as well. So the ordinance as drafted would allow for an accessory use permitted with standards. And the standards are from her original proposed operating standards, as well as city staff's suggestions in consultation with the city attorney. This is her property. She's at 551 North Clay Avenue, which is almost at the intersection of Clay and Essex. And she did provide a survey with her house and the detached garage where she is training the dogs in the yard and also in the garage. She did provide pictures in her application which show her yard, her garage where she's training dogs, and also another view of her yard. She has a large detached garage. So in the ordinance that you were reviewing, we defined her animal training as an animal training home. And we also put it as a permitted with standards use accessory use in single-family residential zoning districts. And this would be available in the side or rear yard, and it would come with use-specific standards. Some of the recommendations of note in that would be animal training would be, could not create an adverse effect on the residential character of the zoning district or interfere with the reasonable enjoyment of adjoining properties. Animal training would be limited to Monday through Friday between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Such training would be located a minimum of 1,000 feet from another training home of the same type. Only one client at a time would be permitted on the premises, but the animals could be on the premises without an owner present, as long as they're supervised at all times, and that no more than 10 animals, including those residing on the premises, would be allowed. Fencing would be required for the rear and side yard for any outdoor training area. And the premises should be maintained and all waste should be disposed of in a safe and sanitary manner. So similar provisions were put before the Planning and Zoning Commission by the applicant, and they recommended by unanimous vote that the text amendment be denied as an accessory use permitted with standards. And the commission also declined to review the accessory use as one that would require a special use permit. Because this was denied by the Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council would have to approve the application with a favorable vote of 2/3 of all members. And the criteria for a text amendment under the zoning code is it has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan and other city adopted plans. It has to be necessary or desirable because of changing conditions, new planning concepts, or other social or economic conditions. It has to promote the public health, safety, convenience, and general welfare. And it would correct an error in the application of the code as applied to subject properties. So we're here tonight to gather information about this. The applicant is here and would like to make a presentation. And if I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you. Oh, we'll have the applicant come up first, and then we'll go to questions. Thank you, Amy.
Without a mask. First of all, I want to thank everyone with all that's going on in the world with Ukraine. This is probably the last place anyone wanted to be. But I really appreciate all your time and all the support from all that I love. Quite honestly, I never imagined this process could be so challenging and difficult. I went through a divorce, and this has been quite challenging. But I want to say how this all started. So I'm a clinical a therapist that I also work with children and adolescents and adults in mental health. However, I've always had worked with animals as well, primarily dogs. And it was an opportunity to bring them into the forefront during the pandemic. So I with my children, I'm a single parent. With them being home, I started to work more in the community, going to people's homes where still the majority and the bulk of my business occurs. I work in people's homes and out in the community with the owners of the dogs, and I train the owners. I work as a coach, work as a therapist at times as well, and train them so that they train their dogs. There's, we can send all our dogs away and be fantastic, well-obedient dogs. However, if the owner doesn't understand the philosophy or understand what to do, the dog after a few months will definitely regress. So that's how this whole process started. I would go to their homes. At that time, we were meeting outside before the vaccines and whatnot were made. So we would meet outside. And this was in April, we're realistically in February, but then in April, a couple months soon thereafter of 2020, it became very clear, working with these families in the community in Kirkwood, North Glendale, Oakland, Webster Groves, but mostly in Kirkwood, that the main piece that was missing that these families couldn't do was socialize their pups. They didn't feel comfortable sending them out to places with fear of contracting something from other humans. Even taking walks was very challenging, when to be on the sidewalk wearing masks. So it was quite clear that these pups, these dogs, were not getting the adequate socialization that I believe they needed. And so it just kind of grew. I started picking up the pups from these people's homes and would take them, brought them to my house, just the pups. And, went it started with 5 and it quickly grew. And I'm very lucky to have a 3-car garage. I'm also very lucky, I think, because I only have 1 car in my family, that I have lots of space in my garage, and a long driveway and a fenced in backyard. And it just started to all come together. And then as it was growing, I asked all my neighbors if they would have any concerns or reservations about me having some dogs in my yard a couple days a week, and they were very supportive. In fact, I welcomed as I got to know more of the dogs too, and until this day, I never took dogs that I never worked with families. It wasn't like dogs I took off the street. I had to make sure that they're being worked with their owners, as well as I needed to know how these dogs were as well to bring them and put them with other dogs. So it soon came where family members of neighbors of some of the owners that had fears of dogs or wanted to socialize their dogs with children, I had some of the children come and work with the dog, like feed the dogs, ride a bicycle. So the bottom line is I've been very fortunate to have also been to a lot of third world countries, Belize, Guatemala, India. And my model is of a pack mentality and of exposure of behavioral training with the natural elements in our environment. And I've had multiple people in this process recommend I go to a warehouse or go to the zoning in a district with the warehouse. For some that may work. I don't believe it's the best thing for pups or dogs. It's not a natural environment. Most dogs, they pick up a lot of barking when they go into these environments because they're very overpopulated and barking is not stopped typically there. A lot of anxiety comes out of that within these dogs. It's a model I don't follow. And so when this opportunity came, and again, it was 2 days, the 2.5 days the most over the year and a half that I was functioning. It was exposure to the elements, to the neighbors, to passerbys, to construction all around us every day. The mail carriers would come, FedEx, garbage trucks. The dogs, it's an opportunity for them to learn how to deal, behave, and not bark, not be scared, not be aggressive. It was a perfect setup. And it was working. So, I do have this detached garage and people ask, well, they're outside all day. Well, we are outside, but we're in my garage where I have built beds, cots, where we work every hour for 20 minutes, we're inside my garage. And then throughout the next 40 minutes, we're in and out. And I have 2 ways into my yard where it became apparent that people would come and drop off one side, they would leave, they could drop off the other side. So it all was kind of running very smoothly. In fact, it was never a deterrent that my property, I didn't have signs. I've never advertised. I've been very fortunate. I don't believe in advertising. My father always told me, if you work hard, you have a great product, it should be by your product or by getting to know people, you build trust and relationships. So I've been very fortunate. I've never had to advertise. So my point is, these dogs were here. It's not like I built this and then they came. In fact, I had a friend talk with Clark Animal Hospital, the Kirkwood Animal Hospital. In the last 2 years, I actually thought we had a lot of dogs before COVID, but the last 2 years, they have doubled the amount of dogs each facility has had, and they're there. And regardless of me, these dogs will be here for 10, 15 more years in Kirkwood. And so they've been here. And so this just all kind of came together. The only thing that may distract from the neighborhood is that I have green turf. And a lot of people have asked, how did you get your grass so green? But it's actually turf in my back. So it's been very easy for me to manage. No one likes to talk about this, but to manage the disposal of the animal's waste. It's very easy to pick up, to keep clean. I'm very strict about that. And it's healthier for their ligaments as well. And the other point is safety. My garage has 3 doors to exit. I can get out if there's ever, I welcome. I know one of the elements is fire issues, safety issues. It should not be a problem. Okay, tell me more. Okay, the other thing I wanted to say is that, so I was working where they would come, the dogs and the owners would drop off between the hours of 8 and 9. And for the younger pups, they would leave by 1:30. And for the older pups that could tolerate longer days, or those older pups that needed more socialization, to work on certain anxiety issues or whatnot, I would have them from 8 to 5. Not weekends. There was no weekends. It was never beyond 5. So the hours, I know there's some issue of noise pollution going on. I'm less hours than any construction, or I've also found a lot of lawn services that also operate after those hours. So that has never been an issue. There was, you're probably asking, why didn't I just continue this? There was a phone call. There was a phone call made, a noise violation in October of last year, and it was actually from a passerby walking in Kirkwood, not from Kirkwood, and did not have a dog. And comes to find out, she is not petrified of dogs, but she has some anxiety with dogs. It was one day where it was more in the morning, and she heard some of the dogs barking. And what mostly happened, I believe, is that she saw the amount of dogs. Because I am literally outside and was outside from, 7:45 until 5:15. I have my lunch out there. Everything's outside. So if a dog barks, and I'm not saying dogs don't bark, that's how they communicate. It's not always a fear bark. It's like, I want to play with you bark, or I want your attention bark. I'm there, I'm on it. It is very rare that I couldn't stop a bark within 30 seconds. And if I couldn't, they would all come with me into my garage. And out of sight, out of nothing. But this particular day, there was a lot going on in the neighborhood. It was noisy, and this woman called. The police was dispatched. They were there less than 8 minutes later. There was not a sound. So not even the dogs even greeted the officer, not a sound. And that particular day, I did have 17 dogs. Now, I understand that no matter what happens, 17 dogs is a lot to ask for. But I'll be completely honest, 3 dogs for me is a much more challenging line of work than 17. Pack mentality of how I work is that I typically have at least five dogs that I've trained and their owners have trained to be calm, submissive, and those 5 then help the other members. So if you have all new young pups or anxious pups, they feed off each other. So I work with some healthy, more trained dogs and then bring in the others. So I'm asking for 10. And that would include, I have 1 dog myself. So that would be 9. So it would be 9 plus my guy. He's actually the trainer. That's kind of, and traffic issues I know has been brought up. Most people didn't even know I existed. And it wasn't that I was hiding it. I don't hide anything. It's just that it was working. So there's never been, in fact, I know down the street, I know in different areas, some people have 5, 6 cars that take up the street. There's never been a traffic problem with me. I have a long driveway, so if a person comes in, they can pull into my driveway and pull out. The next person can come in. However, most of the dogs that were coming by walking. Their owners were walking them, which is what I want so that we can work on those issues for our community. Spring, summer's coming, and for them to learn how to pass by other dogs, to learn how to be outside and go to all our restaurants. Hopefully soon that we can all be outside again and eat. And that's what I was working towards, so that the community of our dogs could be successful in our community at all these locations, whether it's going, all the way almost to school grounds with children, whether it's with all the UPS mailmen. It was all part of this process that I was putting together. Other things, I know I don't want to take up all your time. Any other question? So when I first began, I have learned so much as well through all the boards and committees I've been on, and I didn't know all the logistics. So the first board I went to is the City Adjustment Board. Bless you. And I'll be honest, I don't think that was the correct board that I should have been sent to. And in fact, the members there were all the members through all the committees were very, very, very nice and supportive. They too didn't feel even comfortable voting on the issue because they didn't feel I came to the right board, the Board of Adjustments. But they did vote. I had 2 yeses and I think 3 noes. But they said to keep going. This isn't the right place for you. So then I went to the Permanent Zoning Board, and they came out for a site visit, a subcommittee, which was fantastic. You all are welcome at any time. I mean, it's my backyard. And they were very positive, and they, couple members even said, you know, is it too late to teach one of their old dogs some new tricks, or how do I send my dog up? And it's never too late, first of all. But they were very supportive, and they were looking for the safety. They were looking for the traffic, the noise, the whatnot. And upon the end, the next meeting, the Zoom meeting, I asked them, they said, no, they weren't going to grant it. But I asked them specifically, for my case, why not? Like, what safety concerns did you have? What noise disturbance did you find? What honest to goodness, they couldn't specifically state, other than they did not want to rewrite the zoning code. And I understand it was recently rewritten a couple of years ago. But I also understand COVID hit, the whole world has been changed. And so hence I did more of this home occupation for financial reasons as well. But one thing that did happen in that meeting was it was mentioned about a special use permit, and more looking into that in the last couple of weeks. I don't know why that wasn't allowed, or wasn't discussed further. In fact, the discussion pretty much ended when it was discussed that the special use permit would go with the land if I were to sell, rather than with me. So the board said no. But my understanding is that, gosh forbid, if I die or if I sell the property, the special use permit goes with the person, with the owner. And I guess that's what I'm appealing to. If it's, don't get me wrong, I think that Kirkwood needs more work with their dogs, especially as the population obviously has doubled. And I will support those who have their neighbors' support. They have the facility, they have the owners who are saying that they're doing healthy work with their dogs. I will support those people. However, I've been feeling throughout these last 5 months that to rewrite the zoning code is quite impossible, if I may say. So I'm appealing more for the special use permit, where go as strict as you want with me. Because I know it was working. 3 days a week, that's all I want. But the majority of my work is still in people's homes, or out in the community, in the parks, whatnot. So 3 days a week, every couple of years, to set some committee up to check on me. I know for a fact I won't be able to do it for years and years to come. It's a lot of work to be outside all day, but I love it. But make all the guidelines you want. I guess the only guideline that I wouldn't be able to continue with if you do approve is the amount of dogs. Because at some way too, I also have to look at finances. I mean, I can't work all day with 4 dogs. It wouldn't be fair to charge the owners. So I guess I'm just asking if there is more way to understand the special use permit. That is something I would hope you would do. So that's, I know there's so many people who want to, there's other agenda items, and one night we finished at 12:30, and I don't think you all want to do that.
Thank you, Lynn. Why don't you have a seat, and we'll see if council, just right here. And then
Okay.
if council has questions, you can come up. Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments from council?
I don't know. Like know what the procedure is, but I don't know if we can maybe save a comment to like.
I mean, we'll come back.
Then after they're done, I probably have something.
Anybody else right now? All right, seeing no questions or comments, do we have anyone wishing to speak? Freddie?
Yes, Mayor, we have several. The first card I have is Dana Spitzer. I do apologize if I mispronounce any of your names.
Come on, come on, Dana. Yeah. And one thing I'm going to ask of, I don't know how many speakers we have, please, I'm going to have you keep your comments very brief, and please, if someone has already said something, I agree with Joe, I agree with Sally. No repetition. Hello, Dana.
How you doing?
Doing fine. How are you, sir?
Fine. Yeah, Doreen and I have been here now in Kirkwood. We moved out here over 40 years ago. So, but anyway, and we happen to be neighbors. And we found her in our neighborhood, and we also got a brown lab puppy this year. And so we went down and introduced her. And our puppy's name is Tootsie. She loves to go down there every Thursday. And she kind of, well, she likes to come back when she sees me, but sometimes she'll not. But anyway, I think it's a healthy thing to have this opportunity for a family with dogs. And the dogs are well, I mean, you walk by and some of them, they might bark or something, but it's not anything offensive. It's just dogs in there playing or barking. And so I think the advantage to the neighborhood of this, because she has just outside of the dogs, she has a wonderful reputation with really the entire neighborhood. So I don't see any compelling reason not to allow something like that to go on, and that's why I'm here. So.
Thank you, Dana.
Doreen Dodson.
Mayor Griffin, Mr. Hessel, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Thank you. I'm actually Dana's wife. We've lived at the corner of West Bodley and Clay for 43 years. Our property extends way back along Clay, so we're almost catty corner to the applicant's home. To her point, we did adopt a dog a year ago, January, and until August of this year, we had no idea that Lynn and her business existed. We had never heard barking, didn't know about it. And because we needed some help with our extremely enthusiastic lab, they recommended that we talk to her. Traffic is never a problem. Barking isn't. I think this amendment is exactly the kind of thing that should be allowed to permit. And I really hope that you all will grant this amendment. Thank you for your
Thank you,
attention.
Doreen.
Ann Ziff.
So I first want to acknowledge, yes, I am wearing sunglasses. I just had eye surgery, but I thought it was far more important to be here and you than for fear of looking ridiculous. Okay, so I did write a letter in October when this all happened. Don't worry, it's not long, it'll be brief. I just wanted to highlight some key points from it. So it acknowledged a lot of concerns that have already been brought up. So the street traffic, we often walk our dog or would walk our dog. Noise pollution, as others have said, we've never witnessed any excessive barking. And when we picked our dog up, the dogs are quite well behaved after a day of much needed physical and mental stimulation. I said this business is good for Kirkwood and fulfills a need. Our neighborhood is better for having the opportunity to have our dogs cared for and trained by such an incredible woman. And I also said we were devastated to learn that this was even an issue. Thank you for your consideration in keeping Kirkwood a great place to live and for allowing a small business to thrive that means so much to those it serves. Thank you.
Andrew Unland.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time. I'll make this quick. We've known Belle for we've known Lynn for about a year. Our dog Belle is a golden retriever. And anytime we say the word Lynn or camp or anything like that, she gets so excited. She loves it. There's one time, it just happened a couple weeks ago that we were out walking and Belle and another dog were kind of playing. And we started talking with the other owner and they just happened to be friends from camp. So I think it's great. There's never any traffic in Lynn's neighborhood. We've never had any noise. I don't think there's ever been any noise complaints. So I appreciate the time and hope we can pass this. Thanks.
Kim Crawford.
Kim?
Hi, I'm Kim Crawford. I live here in Kirkwood over close to Taylor and Longview. And my little guy, Cusco, who's a Maltipoo, has been joining Lynn at her training camp. And I think I'll say check to what everybody else said, but I think there's such value in having a place like this in Kirkwood that we can take our dogs so that they're better in the community. I had a dog that it was embarrassing to walk anywhere because he would bark at other dogs. Because of her training, I now can go to the farmer's market. I can go downtown. We can sit outside. We can have lunch. I know there's, we think of dogs and, they're part of the family, but I think there's real value in having a business like Lynn's and getting, a special permit, allowing her to have the special permit. It affects our community and it affects just the whole interaction in our community. So thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Michelle Kraus.
Good evening, Mayor Griffin and council members. My name is Michelle Kraus and I live at 349 East Bodley. I'm a registered nurse by training. My husband's an ER physician at St. Louis University Hospital, and we're the proud parents of two boys, 19 and 16. I'm here to really give you very strong support for this petition for animal training accessory use in a single family home. And I'm going to share a brief story with you. We adopted Penny, who is our mini Irish golden doodle, several months prior to the pandemic. I didn't know what we were getting into because Penny is a working dog. We are also the proud owners of Lucy, who's a mini golden doodle. She lays around and it's almost perfect in her behavior. We started working with Lynn well before the pandemic. My boys even said at that point, what would we do without Lynn? She's helped so much in training our young pup Penny. Then the pandemic hit. My husband, who's an ER physician, we chose as a family for him to move into the basement for 3 months. So he was completely sequestered away from the family. The boys, of course, went to online school, one at St. Louis University High School, one at Kirkwood. I was working for a pharmaceutical company and subsequently lost my job due to COVID, which in a way was a blessing because then I could really devote myself to taking care of not only Penny, who was in much dire need of training now, but the boys, and try to figure out a way to hold our family together. Lynn and canine coaching was extremely instrumental in not just, Penny's evolution as a well-trained pup and in our home, but in the community, but really for us as a family as a whole. And I believe when we have someone like this in the community who is really multi-talented. She truly is a therapist and a coach to the owners, and the consistency with she gives her training to the owners and to the pups makes a huge difference. it's evident on the days, or was evident on the days when Penny did not go to that socialization aspect of her training, that she was much more difficult to deal with in our home. And when she would come back, more well-trained, more well-socialized, and on a consistent basis. So it wasn't every day, but when she would go consistently, it was much more enjoyable to take her on walks and not see her attack the approaching dogs. But one other thing I wanted to mention is I come at a later time, or I came at a later time when I would drop off Penny. And it was really mostly Penny that ever went to this outside training. My other dog didn't need it. So therefore I was opening up space for other people in the community, but I came at a later time. So that's one thing that I would want to just give to you as something to think about, is while you're deciding, my heartfelt hope is that you approve it, but if you're looking for ways to amend certain comings and goings, we can do a sign up genius. I'm happy to come later, because I'd love to have her continue to have such a positive impact on Penny, on my family, and on the community at large. Thank you for your time.
Jim Klimt.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You can hear me. My name is Jim Klimt. My wife and I reside in Glendale, Missouri. We have one daughter who's actually in vet school. She's going to graduate in May, so very, very proud of that. We, like Lynn said, we are one of those families that adopted a dog during COVID, and his name is Gus, and is a rescue dog. And what I would like to say first is, I think it's important to note that at Lynn's house, she has really transformed her home and yard and the garage to a setting, a facility that is designed to house dogs and care for them and allow them to thrive and learn from one another. So, she transformed her garage. She, as Lynn said, she put in AstroTurf in her yard. She has a tall fence all the way around her yard. She has multiple gates. And as I read I forget what the exact terminology was, but the code, I would call the criteria that was written for someone to satisfy what the city's asking for. I read through each one of those points, and Lynn meets or exceeds every one of those in her current dwelling. So I thought that was worth just reinforcing. I don't think it was mentioned tonight, but she has letters from her surrounding neighbors, not just immediately adjacent to her home, but I believe many homes throughout the block have all shown her to support her effort. Her house is her garage and house is particularly in the yard is set far back from the primary street. So I think that's one of the reasons why it helps with the noise level. So I thought it was important to talk about her facility, talk about our dog, Gus. So as the other gentleman said, anytime that I say to Gus, it's time to go to Lynn's, I mean, he spins in circles and he runs to the back door and he can't get in the car fast enough. And when we pull up to her house, I have to do everything I can to keep him on the leash to get him in the gate. That is not the case when I say we're going to go to, I won't name the other places because I don't want to besmirch any other professional firm. But I mean, there's a place on Manchester. You guys probably know who most of them are. And when I bring him there now, he literally lays in the back seat. I have to lift him out of the car. I bring him in their facility and he lays down and he's just, it's just not the same. So I think it speaks to the care and concern and love that Lynn has for, my dog and other dogs. And my final point is Lynn can't stress enough that she's training the owners, not the dogs. And I'm a prime example of that. She knows. I'm probably one of the worst offenders, but she, over time, she has helped my wife and I, really crack down and stress the importance of holding our dog accountable and, treat him a little bit more as a dog and not as a human. We're not quite there yet, but it's just a phenomenal service that she provides, not only for the animal, but also for the family. And I would just ask you, I think it gives you the opportunity to send a message with this request, a message to the community that there can be exceptions made for just an exceptional person like Lynn and an exceptional service that she offers. So I would just ask you to, consider the request and grant it. So thank you. Thanks for your time.
Jack Heller.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name's Jack Heller. I actually live in Glendale, but 22 years ago, my wife and I lived in the city, and we're going to move out of the city. We chose Kirkwood to live, to bring our family. So we chose Kirkwood for a variety of reasons, but mostly because of the quality of life that Kirkwood offers. I think we would all agree that there's things in Kirkwood that are unique, that are special, that we're all a part of, that make our life special. So it's all about kind of this quality of life. And what Lynn's doing, again, she's improving the quality of our lives and the quality of our extended families, our dogs' lives. So we love our dogs like we love our families, right? What she's doing is impacting not only our families' lives, our dogs' lives, our extended families' lives, but what Lynn's doing is really impacting the quality of our lives and our community. So if I said anything more, just be a repeat of what all these folks have already said. So thank you. And again, respectfully, I think what she's doing is really special. And I would ask you to change the ordinance. Thank you.
Libby Rolfing.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me come up and talk on behalf of Lynn. Everybody's already said such wonderful glowing things, and I 100% reiterate and support every single word that has been said, so I won't repeat them, but I will just say two quick things. First of all, just a little bit about the neighborhood, because I live about 6 houses down from Lynn. When all this came up last October, I took a petition and I went, house by house, because as a neighbor, I thought this was an awesome service she was providing. And I happened to have a year-old lab and started having Harley work with her as well. So we were just really devastated when we had to stop taking, our dogs there. So I've personally talked to almost everybody up and down the street, and wholeheartedly everybody supports as neighbors, those that don't have dogs and those that do have dogs. And I had about 4 of them tell me before I left tonight, I can't go, please stand up and give my support too. So there are troops behind me standing here, neighbors and clients of hers that live right in our neighborhood. And the other thing I just wanted to speak on too is the number of dogs. So I know 10 is what she's asking for. And there are days sometimes that I have been up there where there were, I'd have to count, and if they were up to 15, but her yard is big. The dogs love it. The socialization aspect, when you can get that many dogs together and they can find the ones that kind of that they like to hang out with and learn from, and the other ones that have different kind of styles can separate out. And she's got them like an orchestra conductor, man. Those 15 dogs go and do exactly what she says where to go. They're never barking. They're totally under control. But to limit it, I think it would be a really difficult thing for her and a disservice for the dogs. I don't know if 10 is the perfect number. I don't think 15 is too much. You wouldn't even know the difference. So I would just ask for consideration. I hope this all works out and you're able to figure out a solution to the issue, and you're able to give her the license to really be cognizant of and thoughtful about, what limitations and number that might be put on there, because with dogs, numbers are good. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ashley Baumer,
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for letting us all come and speak to you. If you haven't had the opportunity already, I won't repeat what's in there, but I really encourage you to read the 26 family letters that Lynn has provided as part of her packet that talk through noise, traffic, general welfare of the community, and the benefit to Lynn's specific neighborhood, as well as what Libby just mentioned, the signed petition. And just to avoid having to look up where those signatures come from, if I could approach or give this to someone. That's a map at Clay and Essex. And rather than look up where all the signatures are from on that petition, you can see it's all of Lynn's neighbors. Lynn is the blue X on that map, and all the green check marks are individuals that signed the petition in support of what Lynn was doing, and we hope she can do again. So without reiterating all of that, what I want to just speak to is the recommendation that came out of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and want to make sure that City Council knows that Lynn has been told every step of the way in this process that the special use permit is also being considered. I virtually attended the Planning and Zoning meetings, and at the second meeting, it's when the subcommittee report was presented, and there was a discussion about the accessory use amendment and then about the special use permit. And the members there asked Ms. Lowry what would happen if they granted the special use permit and then Lynn moved. And Amy responded, Ms. Lowry responded that Lynn would have to reapply for a new special use permit at her new property if it was still within Kirkwood. But there was one of the commissioners on the Planning and Zoning Board, as well as City Attorney Mr. Hessel, indicated that a special use permit runs with the land, and that if Planning and Zoning recommended the special use permit to Lynn, that they were saying it was okay for any subsequent owner of the property to then continue to use it for animal training. And that while there were only positive comments that were on the record, and I'm fairly confident you'll hear only positive comments tonight. And if you look at the transcript, you'll hear only positive comments about Lynn from the Board of Adjustment, that it wasn't only about Lynn. And I do understand that when you change something, you are opening that up for others to apply, but that there was a concern about all those subsequent owners of the home. And not surprising when, if we're not granting it to Lynn, who you're hearing all this information about, but we're talking about all the subsequent owners of the home, then that certainly increases concerns about whether granting a special use permit would be in the best interest of Kirkwood. And I believe that that information that was presented that night at Planning and Zoning was incorrect. Could I approach again? Missouri law states that the grant of a special use permit is regarded as personal to the landowner to whom it's granted. And this is in contrast with a variance, which runs with the land and can be distinguished from the permit. And in this case, which is a Missouri Court of Appeals case that I won't go into all the details on, but I'm just providing you with a copy of. It's from the, it's from the Missouri Court of Appeals for the Eastern District. If a building is constructed on the property for the express purpose of that special use, then it can be considered an investment in the improvement of the land, and it may run with the land. But in this particular case, the Court of Appeals is holding that when the special use permit is granted to an individual, there is no improvement made upon the specific land, that it actually does run with the individual. So granting Lynn the special use permit is limited to Lynn. She's not requesting a building to be added. And in fact, as is possible in the Section 2520F, you could impose conditions that also indicated that it specifically stopped with Lynn. But I believe that information that was presented was incorrect. And I believe that it prejudiced the Planning and Zoning Board. And now we're in a situation where she needs a supermajority. So I really would appreciate if that could be further investigated, looked into, to make sure that that was the accurate information that was presented to Planning and Zoning. Second, I know that the concerns are about opening the floodgates, but I would really encourage you to look at the case-by-case basis that's allowed for in the purpose of the special use permits, to also look at your ability to impose additional conditions and safeguards. Require an unattached garage, require AstroTurf, limit the number of animals you have within your ability to make this safe and to make it something that not just everyone can qualify for, but only people that are doing it correctly the way that Lynn is doing it. And then finally, you have the ultimate recourse at your disposal, which is that you can revocate the special use permit. So if Lynn isn't following what you've set out, or if someone else isn't following what you've set out, then you have the ability to remove that special use permit. So I would just encourage you to look at that all the concerns that are being raised that you'll see in some of the paperwork. They're theoretical. They're what ifs. What if someone else applies? What if there's a safety concern? All of the evidence that you're going to hear when you read through the transcripts of the other hearings or listen to the folks that are here tonight, this is all actual evidence. They are people who walk their dogs by Lynn's house every day. They are people who use Lynn's services, and it is overwhelmingly in support of Lynn. And so I feel that tonight, when you vote, you have the ability to say yes and to do so in a way that benefits Kirkwood. And I really encourage you to do so. And also just encourage you to look further at the special use permit, and please consider only having a requirement that she have a majority rather than a super majority vote if that was incorrect information provided to planning and zoning. Thank you.
Joyce Payne.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joyce Payne, and that's my husband, Jack, and we are residents of Kirkwood. We've lived here about 3 years. I was born and raised in St. Louis, moved away when we got married and moved back in retirement. And about a year ago, we adopted a dog, and obviously, as retirees, we were a little overwhelmed by the activity of a pup, right? And we knew we needed some help. And through word of mouth, which I think speaks extremely highly of Lynn, in Kirkwood, people know of her. They know about the service that she provides, the quality of service. And so she was recommended to us. And we looked at other places, but we weren't going to get the same types of service that Lynn provides and the quality of service. You feel like Lynn's a part of your family when you take your dog. So does your dog think she's one of the family. As everybody has said before, your dog loves going there. They get trained, you get trained. And if you look around Kirkwood and you think about not just Lynn and what you're providing to Lynn, if you agree to allow her to have this business, but what you're doing for Kirkwood, because Kirkwood is overrun with dogs. If you live here in the community, you know that you can't go out and walk in the morning or after work without seeing, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 dogs on your process of your walk. And I will tell you, the dogs that Lynn has handled and the people she has worked with, you're going to see well-behaved dogs. They won't approach another dog in a negative way or a person and make them afraid. People don't have to walk across the street. They know that these are well-behaved and well-trained dogs. And I can tell you, our dog is kind of the pride of the neighborhood. Everybody loves him because he's so well-behaved. And I think that's what you need to think about, because that service doesn't exist anywhere else in Kirkwood. And we've looked around and we've taken our dog to other facilities, and you're just not getting the same quality of service. And so I hope you will really, really, really think about this, and not just for Lynn, but I think for the residents of Kirkwood, do the right thing. And thank you.
We're asking you guys to step up and approve this thing. I just want you to know how good Lynn is about the bond between training the owner and training the dog. Before she began to train our dog, she came to our house and spent 2 hours in our family room interviewing the dog. Now, this dog is his name is Rory, and he's a half-breed mutt. He's half border collie and half standard poodle. And you all know those are two smart breeds. And so this dog is smart. But what we've learned from Lynn and from the dog is we have to be boss. The dog is so smart, he exercises his intelligence to get what he wants, not necessarily what you want. And you have to figure out through Lynn's coaching how to get what he needs to do. And Lynn has molded us and him into good citizens, K9 and otherwise. So please step up and help her out.
Thank you.
Lindsay Turner.
I have a little bit of a different perspective. Lynn doesn't actually directly work with my dogs. I live right next door to her. We share a fence. And I'm here to speak in favor of her. She's been an amazing neighbor. We moved here a little over a year ago, and I have nothing but wonderful things to say. She's probably my most favorite neighbor I've ever had. And my kids adore her. In fact, my 13-year-old son just texted me to ask me how it was going because they miss the dogs. They miss Lynn. She's been amazing for our family. The dogs are not a problem at all. I have a 13-year-old all the way down to a 2-year-old, and I have 6 kids. So my 2-year-old naps, no problem. They're not barking. They do bark, dogs bark, but it's not something that has caused a problem for my family in any way, shape, or form. Every time when I came to the first meeting that went till 12:30 at night, and I came home and my kids asked how it went, and I said she wasn't approved, they were devastated because it is something that means a lot to them. She would let them go over, help them train. I was never fearful for my dogs being over there because Lynn was always out with the dogs. She taught my kids how to work with dogs. They'd come home and try to train our own dogs. So, and then to speak to the cleanliness of the property, my kids are over there on her turf doing cartwheels and backflips and rolling around on the grass because it is that clean. It is not something that is abused. She loves those animals. My kids love those animals. We love her. And I just wanted to provide a different perspective because like I said, she has helped me with my dogs. When I go over and I'm like, my dog is doing this, she has no problem coaching me on what I should be doing differently or what I could do to help out. But my dogs don't go there for a daycare. She's just an amazing neighbor. And I still believe that her business is a benefit to our community. So thank you.
There are no more cards.
Come back to council. Anything, council? Councilmember Sears?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I don't have much to say, except that I think that through, times do change. We did go through a pretty serious pandemic event, and it changed certain things about the way people work, where they work, working remotely and things like that. And one thing that we've proven we can do is we can be nimble. We can change things subtly for the good of the community and the spirit and everything else. I don't have any problem. I think staff handled this absolutely appropriately. They looked at the guidelines and for home businesses and came up with exactly the right conclusion. So therefore, the Board of Adjustment, when they listened to whether their job was to decide whether that interpretation was correct or not, and they said it was correct, which doesn't get to run the home business. So, I have nothing to say except that everybody in the government up to us has acted appropriately and under all the guidelines. And so has the applicant, who has, gone through several different routes. And I think that whether it's a change to the zoning code or a special use permit that attaches to the land or attaches to her, I don't think we should be fearful about this great business. Not this business, but the business of training dogs in a home setting. I think it's really important. As far as the number of dogs, I think.
That's for the next meeting. Okay,
What?
tonight we're just getting information. We'll
And
deliberate.
I'm
well,
putting into
so we-
my testimony into the
We
record.
we don't offer testimony. We get information. When we deliberate at the first reading is when we'll give an opinion. I think this is a good idea. That's not a good idea.
Well, I think.
This is not the
okay,
place
okay,
for it.
But what I think is that regardless of how it can come out, I would like to see, and this goes to what we will review next. I would like to see options perhaps presented to us about whether we can, whether we're stuck with changing the code or whether we could consider a special use and whether that could run with the individual.
And
Thank
when we have our deliberation, if that's what the majority of the council wants, that's,
Sure. no.
again, that's the public hearing is where we gather info. Then we deliberate and consider those kind of things at the first reading. So, anything else from council? All right, well, with that, the public hearing is closed and this will be on our new business agenda on March 17th. Thank you all. We even allowed people from Glendale to talk. Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
All right. Now we will go to public comments, non-public hearing related.
Yes,
comments.
correct. For general public comments, the public comments portion of the meeting is an opportunity for the city council to listen to comments from citizens. It is not a question and answer session, and the city council will not respond to comments or answer questions during this period. The mayor may refer any matter brought up to the city council to the chief administrative officer or city clerk if action is needed.
Thank you.
Mayor, there are no public comments.
Right. We will move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
We have a motion, a second. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Consent agenda passes. Unfinished business bill 10914A.
Sure I got the right one. Thank you. Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance granting a special use permit for an animal facility major at 455 through 459 South Kirkwood Road, Woodbine Center, subject to certain conditions.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz.
Yes.
Bill passes. Bill 10915.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance appropriating $35,000 from the Fleet Service Fund balance to the Fleet Service Parts account due to an increase in vehicle repair and parts replacement expenses.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward, Councilmember Wertz.
Bill passes. Go to new business, Bill 10917.
Sorry, Your Honor, there's still one more item on.
That's good. I changed my order here. Stand corrected. Bill 10916.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance vacating a 10-foot wide easement that exists on Lot 4 of Hobrook Common as recorded in Plat Book 32, page 34 of the St. Louis County Recorder of Deeds, located in the city of Kirkwood, St. Louis County, Missouri, and more particularly described on Exhibits A and B attached here to and incorporated by reference herein.
Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz.
Bill passes. Now we go to new business, Bill 10917.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance adopting and approving the operating and capital budgets for the city of Kirkwood for the fiscal year April 1, 2022 through March 31, 2023, and appropriating such sums as are set forth herein for all departments and the accounts therein specified for all expenditures of the city of such year, which appropriations total $102,481,001. Capital projects of $9,431,744, appropriating the sum of $202,300 for the payment of principal for Performing Arts Center interfund loan from the general fund, and reappropriating $5,554,199 for previously approved projects that will be incomplete as of March 31, 2022.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
And we got a motion and a second. Questions or comments from council? Anything from Councilmember Ward?
Well, I've got a list here. Consider most of them to be omissions from the budget. First, one of the things that I would like to state is that almost all of these things I've discussed a number of times over the last 4 years. And what is most concerning to me is that I still have no idea where the rest of the council is. Any of these items. And I'm hopeful that tonight we can have a somewhat robust conversation about these items. I know it's possible because I've seen in the past 4 years on 2 occasions where we had very complete and energized conversation. One was on the color of the trash cans when we adopted pickup cans, and the other was on the primary colors for the new Performing Arts Center. So it's possible we can do that. I think some folks will have to just develop a little more confidence. First, for me is one of the things that I've felt is a big hole in our preparedness, and that's for emergency shelter and emergency preparedness. The largest building that the city owns and controls is the community center. It's now under consideration for some improvements, and at that point, at some point in the future, we'll have the ability to hook up emergency generation so it can be provided power. You might ask, well, why is that important? Well, we do reside in Tornado Alley. Even if we're not struck by a tornado, we've seen what can happen when we have a large power outage due to the ice storm, if it's severe enough and our major supplier, Ameren, is unable to get power. The next set of large buildings in this district are owned by the Kirkwood School District. All but one of the school district's buildings reside in Kirkwood, and they're underway with remodeling all of their buildings, and they're adding emergency generation in cooperation with Mark Petty, who's the director of our electric department. So those buildings will be able to provide power in an emergency setting. The next largest building would be Merrimack Community College. It doesn't have any emergency generation capacity, but I think we could enter into some conversations with them. So there are some first steps. One, we need to have a conversation with the school district about how our buildings would be used. What's important in this budget tonight is that I believe we should have the administration provide us with an estimated cost to begin some first steps, which is one, having our fire department and police propose how we would use those emergency shelters and we've seen across the country what has happened and when 900 homes go down, scrambling for some place for them to shelter. So I think it would be important for us to have them provide us with those first steps for negotiating the shared use of their facility. Also give us cost estimates for providing for those buildings, helping with the adoption of that emergency generation capacity. So that's one. So that's the emergency preparedness and shelter. The next one that's important to me, I've also talked about this for 4 years now, is our board and commissions. We have 22 boards and commissions. And with maybe 2 exceptions, the Board of Adjustment and Planning and Zoning, the vast majority of them get very rudimentary training to sunset laws and some basic understanding of Robert's Rules of Order. But there is no comprehensive training, and they're all different. But it would be a great investment, I think, and a much needed investment that we provide some kind of formalized training specific to each of those boards and commissions. I think we should task the administration to provide us with some cost estimates to get that done. They're important, they're a critical part of our city's operation and our bureaucracy. The fact that we're going through a generational change has meant that in many instances now we've lost the kind of institutional memory that comes with folks who. So that would be one, boards and commission training. And these are in no particular order. Stormwater. We all are aware that, and we've had conversations and work sessions about this, we have a number of homes where, due to past direction by the city, folks dump their sump pump drains to the street. Say, well, how's that a problem? Well, in the winter they freeze, and in the summer it's a slimy mess. And we know it's there, and we get complaints about it on a regular basis. It needs to be a part of the solution is the city, because the city directed it, and in some cases. So I think we need to be part of the solution. And so I would like to have the administration directed to provide us with an estimate of what that might look like. Some options there. Next, one that's important to all of us, and that's streets. For the folks who haven't been around here a long time or haven't taken the time to read much of our city history, the charter that we operate under now came about for a number of reasons, but foremost in its revision from a strong mayor form of government was the fact that all too often over its 170-year history, there was a great deal of unfairness in applications of laws and finances and resources in the city. And if you speak to, hopefully I get this right, Mr. Raish, who is the director of the Planning, Development, and Services Department. Did I get that right, John? You will find that throughout the city, there are tremendous variances in how we applied planning and zoning and lot coverage and sites on properties, largely in R4. And the fact that we created R4 districts in certain areas of the city and made it okay was largely about influence and call it special. And I say all of that to say that we have now, under the new charter, still in many ways not overcome some of that legacy. We have over the last 5 years, in an effort to make up for lost time, lost ground on our street repair and maintenance, we've not had a standardized program for streets. Some streets continue that legacy. If you had a lousy street, you're pretty much just going to get a lousy street repaved. I think that's unfair. I think that's not Kirkwood good. I think we need to have some standardization of the streets, and I'm proposing, and I've mentioned this once before or several times before, I'm proposing that this budget contain stipulations that we operate on 4 prototypes of streets. And I've sent copies of this to. So those would be complete concrete streets, curb to curb, with one with a standing curb, traditional standing curb, or the other option would be to have a concrete rolled curb. Second Street would be a asphalt street with a standing curb and concrete curb and gutter, or a asphalt street with a rolled concrete curb and gutters. Actually, the use of concrete gutters and curbs on an asphalt street gives it more resilience. It extends its lifetime. It's a good investment if you're going to have an asphalt street. But, and I guess we can have the administration and the Director of Public Works provide us with any other kinds of alternates. But I think the application of best practices in our streets repair and maintenance is what's fair to everyone. I don't think that and often the decision on what quality of street you're going to get is done by a third-party engineering firm that says, well, this will draw the best score with East-West Gateway. I don't think that's how any of us ran for office. And when we took our oath, we didn't say, well, I'm going to take care of these folks real good, but cost money short, you're going to not do so well. So I'm hopeful that that's one other thing that the council can take under consideration. Next is one that's really critical over the life of the city, and that's our water. As you know, across the nation, clean water is concern. We have, 100+ water system. At the current rate of repair or replacement, we're going to take 100 years. That's not sustainable as far as I'm concerned. I think we should undertake, and I'm hoping that we can instruct the administration to draft a plan and a budget proposal for eventual complete replacement of that, hopefully utilizing the 80-20 funding that's going to be coming from the federal government. That's not just a convenience issue, that's a safety issue too. We have a great deal of lead in our water system, and we only need a couple of guys to make a mistake over at Missouri American Water Treatment Plants, and all of our pipes will be as exposed as those in Flint, Michigan. That's a hazard I think we're well aware of, but we're not doing anything to improve that set of circumstances. So I would like for us to consider taking those steps to begin. We can't get it all done now, but we should be responsible enough to safeguard future generations in Kirkwood. Lastly, and this is more of an organizational issue, and this comes to facilities management. When I think about our asset management, our facilities manager basically is handed what each department director gives him to spend on buildings, or we do large scale maintenance and repairs based on an emergency basis, not a planned. It seems to me that from an organizational standpoint, we would be better off having all of the facilities budget under the control of the facilities manager and out of the hands of department directors. Takes some of the inherent prejudices that a director might have, and they may have a higher priority here and continue to insist on spending money other than in their facilities. So that's something I think we should take up. So that's what I've limited my list to.
Since you brought it up, I'll make some of my comments on it first, and we can open it up in no particular order. Board and commission training, I'd put that on us more than administration, maybe more here, and about more specific training. I understand it's a hard thing to do, specific training on a particular board, but I think that's more here and here than it is with administration. So, and Laurie and I have talked about it. That's on us. We'll work on that.
That's fine with me. I just recognize that it's going to need money.
Yeah, understood. And, we can, if we want money for that, there'll be money for that. So, let's get to streets. Actually, Russ and I, a couple weeks ago, talked and about the standard Kirkwood Street, and I expressed support. It's not a budget issue right now. I mean, we're going to have so much for it, but and we'll talk about it, that as soon as possible, I support the idea of doing the quality work, even if that means doing less streets, as you and I have talked about. So that's something that will be coming up soon. It's not going to change the budget, at least this year. We're going to have X dollars for it, but it might mean doing streets in a different way. Let's see. Emergency preparedness, I'll get to Russ on that. We've got an emergency plan, whether it goes as far as facilities, schools. I don't know the answer to that. We can hear from Russ on that, but I mean, emergency preparedness is something that we need to have. I know we've got an emergency plan. To what extent it goes into those details, we'll find out. Stormwater, that has been something I know you've talked about. I don't know how unless we do it on a case by case, address by address basis. That's something we'll have to. I know you've mentioned that many times, and we all see it. And I used to live in a house that back when it was built, it was directed to go out on the street. So that's something that we'll have to do, and to what extent, how we correct that. I mean, we've got to talk about that. What else did you have? Stormwater, water infrastructure. We have a conversation on that. Facilities management. Again, that would be something that we talk about with Russ as to what is the best way to do that. So we can hear from some other people, but before we go to Russ. But those are my thoughts on the six. Specifically to Councilmember Ward's topics, is there anybody like to engage on that? Councilmember Sears?
Yes, thank you. I want to just be clear that I agree with everything that Wallace said, and I agree also with your kind of caveats that you put on some of them. Okay, and like for I think the stormwater you're talking mostly about, or one of the specifics you brought up was the drainage, the sump pumps going directly into the street, which on our street is a good example. It doesn't matter how dry the summer is, there's a creek running down our street, right? And in the winter, there's ice over the sidewalks. My wife broke her leg on one of them because the water just continues to flow from one of the houses and across the thing. So she didn't see the ice patch. So that was years and years ago. Statute of limitations probably. So anyway, I just want to be out there and say, yes, I think we need to look at Wallace's questions and hopefully when it's appropriate, the first time it's appropriate to put it in a budget to make it a budget item. In the sump pump situation, seems like it's either two options. Either they have to release into the yard where they can slowly flow across lawn, which is how mine is set up, or go into the storm sewer line, which I know some communities have that, and MSD has gone around and actually tied in some downspouts, stormwater, into the storm drains. So I guess what I'm saying there is there are solutions, and I don't know, have to look in to see what the city's cost would be, whatever measure is taken. But anyway, pay attention to the things that Wallace put forward, and like I said, caveats or views that you
Councilmember Wertz.
My hesitation would be the street. How and why, right? Like, let's. Dedicated budget item unless it's like survey or but I will say every single one of those are pressing items, I think.
Well, and just a quick response, you know, my sense of urgency is that we've accelerated the number of streets across the city, and we won't be coming back to those. So each year we wait and delay, we're insulting more neighborhoods with less than fair streets. I think when we talk about the streets, if you have an asphalt street now, the difference we're talking about is putting concrete curbs and gutters in, which from a Vision Zero standpoint, that's a safety issue. Curbs provide some safety for pedestrians and folks on sidewalks, or anything that's near the edge. They're also effective at controlling stormwater, which was. So I don't know that waiting to decide whether each of our 160 miles of street, what type of street they want is right now. I think here are your options. For those folks who are happy with a poorly paved street, stay there, then we can have a conversation about whether that's in the best interest of the city. Allow that level of self-control, I guess. But it does concern me that we're burning time. It's an issue out there now for 5 years. We've accelerated it. You know, I was glad we got away from that geographic sectioning that we did. That never made sense to me because there was no financial advantage or convenient for staff and for the contractors, but that would be it. So I think that's important. And one other thing that I just came to mind about streets too was, you know, we've been at this for 5 years now. Got here because some folks said, you know, it'll be cheaper and more efficient if we use third parties to maintain our streets rather than do it in-house. I've asked for some time ago, and I haven't seen it yet. Hopefully they're working on it. If not, I hope we could begin working on it. We can now do a direct comparison over the last 5 years for our asphalt streets. What did it cost us to do it with third parties versus what it cost us when we were doing it in-house? I think that'd be an important question to have, because having the autonomy and the flexibility of doing it with our own people was a great way to do it. We have one of the best street systems in the county with one. So I think it'd be important for us to have that analysis.
Else from council on Wallace's points? Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, a lot of these things are important. I like the idea of having some type of at least basic board training to where, because we've all seen it in the boards that we're liaisons to, where folks don't know Robert's Rules of Order. They don't necessarily know how to start the meeting and stop the meeting. And, you know, I think if we can give folks some basic training and structure on those meetings, I think our boards will continue effective in the future.
Russ, just a couple of quick comments from you. And what I think, just with the caveat that obviously a lot more work or even quick work needs to be done on some of these. I just simply wanted to ask you really about the emergency preparedness. If
Mhm.
there's, I mean, with the plan in terms of if we did have the tornado or whatever. I know we've got the plan and I
Right.
looked at it before.
Right. No, and we're aware that the community center doesn't have generation capacity right now or capability right now for electrical. It can be used as an emergency shelter in the daytime and things along those lines. But if it ever lost power, you know, in a cold situation or a hot situation, it doesn't function well as that. So we feel that in part of our analysis for the community center upgrade that we're looking at right now, we've had discussions about having a permanent generator there and making it a full-fledged emergency shelter. So those discussions are ongoing, and I appreciate Mr. Ward bringing that up here because we're in the process on that actually right now. With regard to the other items Mr. Ward brings up, they certainly are valid. You know, these are what I would consider very apt discussion points for the next budget planning session, you know, which will be coming in a couple of months. So I think that we've laid some good groundwork for discussion on those. So, and we can start looking into, if council wishes to act on any one, we can set up a work session to discuss any one at any time.
Well, what I think we'll do is you and I, when we meet next week or the week after, we'll specifically talk about these, and if others have anything else, and we'll come up with a discussion plan to talk about them. And what, you know, how do we go about making sure with our emergency preparedness, just, you know, dealing with the school district because of the facilities, and same with facilities management. So you and I will talk, and then we can decide the best way to bring council in on it and how to move, you know, move forward on them, whatever way that works best.
That's fine. That's great.
So, anything on that, Wallace? I mean, okay, all right. Any other council comments or questions on, let me get the right bill, on 10917? All right. Seeing none, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Bill passes first reading. Bill 10918.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance approving the budget of the Special Business District for the fiscal year April 1, 2022 through March 31, 2023.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Motion a second. Questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Say no. All right, bill passes first reading. Bill 10919.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance appropriating $1,261,675 from the general fund balance to the transfer to other funds account, and then to the capital improvement fund transfer from other funds account for the fire department.
Is there a motion for approval? Second?
Second.
All right, any questions or comments on the bill?
Just again, I think it might be worth just a quick explanation about how the funds transfer across the books. Because it's, you know, it just.
Oh, I'll be glad to explain them.
It can look kind of odd.
It does look odd. It was difficult for me to read across that too. So, you know, this is really an equitable way of treating the funds that are captured through the fire department, the fire sales tax that was approved by voters. It's being treated under this scenario similarly to the police sales tax that we recover as well. The police sales tax goes, or it's actually called public safety sales tax in this county, and it's distributed to the city. But that actually goes into our capital fund to fund the capital of police department purchases. So this is similar for that purpose, but only for the fire department.
So the money first comes into the general fund.
Yes.
Then
That
it
goes to,
ultimately has to go to fire department.
that is correct.
So it
into the
transfers
Fire
through
department
this
capital.
fund called the other funds account.
Yes, sir.
But ultimately it gets to the right way. And I think the reason I brought it up is I think even though the words and the length of the ordinance sounds like they're shuffling, actually the
Most direct way.
apparent way, and it's also shows every step of the way. So
Correct.
It's not obscure.
Correct.
Thank you for the question and the explanation. Anything else on this from council? All right, seeing none, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Say no. Bill passes first reading. Resolution 19, 2022.
Mayor and council, this is a resolution amending and readopting the city of Kirkwood city fee schedules.
Is there a motion for approval? Second? Motion is second. Any questions or comments on the resolution? Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes, and Russ and I talked about the budget, and we talked in particular about fees, and Russ, if you can maybe kind of touch on this a little bit about your analysis of fees on a regular basis to make sure that we are charging enough to cover expenses and to have these in the ballpark where they need to be, comparing with fees of other municipalities to make sure that we're getting the revenues that we need to cover our budgeted amounts. And if not, what can we do, or is there anything that we need to be doing differently?
Yeah, I'll be glad to. The city evaluates on a yearly basis the fee structures of all the fees that we charge across the departments. We evaluate those in comparison to comparator cities, but also in regard to the actual costs that need to be recovered for the particular service being provided, such as ambulance, such as recreation facilities fees, things along those lines. And each year we work with the department heads to outline if we should adjust or change in any way the schedule that has been charged previously. I will say that during the pandemic is not an optimal time to adjust those fees, so we did not look to make any major changes. We had discussed some dynamic fee structuring at the ice rink and things along those lines previously, but I think we need to settle out of the pandemic into whatever the new normal is to identify the most appropriate rate, because the rec department frankly took a difficult hit from the pandemic in the previous year. And we're just now getting back up with the structure that we have now. So we want to evaluate that for a year or so before we go any further.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ward.
Well, regarding fees, and I know I'm parse again, as a taxpayer, I think my fees should be, at least as a resident, I should be charged a fee that basically covers cost plus, not what's competitive with Layton. I don't think that's what taxpayers invest in facilities and so that we can compete with other folks. If we're going to do that, we could just go commercial with everything. I think our philosophy should be, as much as possible, anticipating future costs and maintenance and upgrade or replace, all of those things. They should be cost-based, not competitive-based.
And that is considered.
Anything else on this resolution? All right. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin, Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz.
Resolution passes. Resolution 20, 2022.
Mayor and council, this is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a fourth amended cooperation agreement, a copy of which is attached here to and incorporated by reference herein, with the cities of Glendale and Oakland for the Kirkwood Aquatic Center through March 31, 2023.
Motion for approval?
So moved.
Second? Questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz.
Resolution passes. Resolution 22, 2022.
Sorry, Your Honor,
21.
21,
You know what? I keep moving this over too fast. That's all. I've got a method down. Resolution 21, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution amending the contract with Lockmuller Group by increasing the contract amount for a not to exceed amount of $146,525, which includes contingency of $14,000 for a new mid-block pedestrian signal at Craig and Craigwoods, and authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into an amended contract.
Is there a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Is there a second? Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin, Councilmember Sears.
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz.
Resolution passes. Now, resolution 22, 2022.
The deputy mayor is here if you're.
Oh.
Shuffling. So you guys
Got
look at
the
the,
look,
you look
too.
at the iPad. I got to shuffle the papers. And sometimes I shuffle one too many over. It's like, oh my gosh. Thanks for the consideration. though. I appreciate that.
I'm all about caring.
I know you are.
Ready.
All right, Mayor and Council, this is a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a multi-use approaches intergovernmental cooperative agreement, copy of which attached here too and incorporated by reference herein, with the cities of Fenton and Sunset Hills.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz.
Resolution passes. Now, which one are we on, Laurie? No, I'm kidding. Resolution 23, 2022. I am.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the bid of Fletcher Reinhardt in the amount of $499,025 for the purchase of single-phase pole mount dual voltage transformers for the electric department and directing the Director of Procurement to issue a purchase order.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz.
Resolution passes. Resolution 24, 2022.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the proposal of Symetra on a self-insured basis for the city's health insurance stop-loss coverage for the period of April 1, 2022 through March 31, 2023.
Is there a motion for approval? Second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz.
Resolution passes. Now, there's no more resolutions I can mess up. I know, really. All right, city council reports. Anything to report? Anyone? All right. Chief Administrative Officer report.
I have nothing to report at this time, Mayor.
That's right. City Attorney report.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
All right. City Clerk report.
Yes, Your Honor, I have one thing to report. The March 2nd, 2022 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The following action was taken after a presentation by staff and the petitioner to rezone 10414 Big Bend Boulevard from R4 to RMM. A subcommittee was appointed. The subcommittee meeting will be held on site March 7th at 8 a.m. After a presentation by staff and the petitioner for a special use permit for animal facility minor with outdoor use and site plan review for Kennelwood Pet Resorts at 10936 Manchester Road, a subcommittee was appointed. The subcommittee meeting will be held on site March 10th at 9 a.m. And that's all I have to report, Your Honor. There are no scheduled upcoming public hearings at this
Great.
time.
Mayor, I did forget.
Oh, my gosh,
Oh,
we're
my
in
God.
trouble. We're in trouble.
I attended the reception for the retirement of Officer DeGonia.
Oh,
from the
did you? Oh,
Police
good.
Department.
Yes,
And
34 and a half years.
A lot of good time for the city and. we'll miss
Absolutely. Well, he's not going far. He lives about, what, 2 blocks from you
Yeah,
guys,
and
so.
he had some great stories to tell. too.
No, we'll still see Dave. We'll still see Dave around a lot. So thanks for mentioning that. All right, next meeting of City Council is 7 PM, March 17th. This meeting is adjourned.